when a customer or a client is experiencing a service, they're not only comparing to your competition, they are also comparing it to other categories. Today, e-com players are managing the reverse logistics. It is very painful. Reverse logistics is the most painful kind of transaction.
Who's sitting on top of everything to see whether the transformation, because you mentioned that 20% is the only equation when it comes to measurement.
Platforms are not going to transform things for you. Platforms are going to help you identify issues early.
Where do they lose the focus?
Where does the insight come in? The insight comes in the fact that my detractor is also a detractor for the competition, or it is a promoter, or my promoter is also a promoter for competition or a detractor for the competition.
If I really need to tell a CEO that before you invest into a CX transformation program, what is the checkpoint? What kind of an advice would you give them that you need to have these checkpoints before you actually get into that? Welcome to another episode of the Collaborative Canvas. Customer experience has become one of the most discussed topic in business today. Organizations are investing heavily in CX programs, customer journey mapping, NPS tracking, AI-powered engagement, and transformation initiative. Yet, many of these efforts fail to deliver meaningful business impact. And the reason is very simple. We always ask this question to ourselves, why is that? Is the problem in how we measure experiences, or is it in how we transform organizations around it? To help us unpack these questions, I'm joined by Raja Bunet, a customer experience and operational excellence consultant with over 24 years of experience in quantitative research and CX. Raja is also the former CEO of Ipsos India and has worked extensively at the intersection of customer insights, operational performances, and business transformation. One of the ideas that immediately caught my attention during my conversations with Raja was his view that CX measurement and CX transformations are two completely different ballgames. He also speaks extensively about what he calls CX transformation pitfalls, the blind spot organizations often overlook before they even begin their transformation journey. We will also explore his innovative concept, the strength of NPS metric, and discuss why a strong net promoter score may not always mean a strong competitive position. If you're a business leader, CX professional, researcher, marketer, founder, or anyone responsible for improving customer outcomes, this conversation is packed with practical insights. So let's get this started. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Ankesh. Thank you so much for having me today.
Sir, to start with, I would probably say the last time when we were talking about, we specifically mentioned about customer transformation and customer experience measurement.
Yes.
But to start with, and specifically for the people like students who are right now probably be hearing this, how do we define CX transformation and CX measurement? Before that, even CX.
All right. So I think just to put it very simply, and it is simply to understand how customers or your clients are experiencing what you're delivering to them, right? It could be in form of a product, it could be in form of a service, or it could be on a platform, right? Either delivered in person or via a platform, via tech platform. But essentially, simply put, it is how customers experience what you're delivering to them. As simple as that. And then we transition into two important parts. One is to understand how that is getting delivered and how customers are, receiving this service, which is the measurement part. And then what the businesses need to do to ensure that what customers want are getting, right? So essentially, if you look at the entire equation of CX, one part is measurement, which actually is only 15 to 20% of the equation. The remaining 80 to 85% essentially is the transformation bit. And that is where I think a lot of focus needs to be given today within the CX equation by businesses, because today there is massive amount of data that organizations have on customer experience measurement. Some data is available directly through surveys that they conduct, through research that they conduct. Otherwise, there is a lot of information available on competition as well as competitive categories through secondary research. But essentially, where a lot of focus is required, as from a strategy standpoint, is on the business transformation. And I, for a purpose, do not only call it CX transformation. I call it business transformation, because that is the shift that we need to see, and start calling it business transformation and not only CX. We'll touch upon the reasons why.
And that's something that I'm just about to come to. That how come most of those companies actually misunderstood between those two terms?
Well, I think if I wish to draw a parallel between business transformation, CX transformation, and one key element of business, which is Six Sigma, right? Now, Six Sigma is a complete mindset change, right?
Correct.
Six Sigma has to come top down. The CEO of the organization has to drive it. Similarly, when we talk about CX transformation or business transformation, it has to come top down. Number one, because whatever you say, there are silos that exist in an organization, right? Typically, whenever we talk about CX, you start to think about one particular function or one particular individual within the organization who's responsible for CX. But that particular function or person cannot carry out the transformation that is required.
Correct.
Right? Now, the marketing person will think only about acquisition.
Exactly.
Right? The finance person, quite rightly so, right? Only think about cost savings, right? Or revenue. At the same time, the tech guy will only think about platforms and what I can do to make things better. The CX guy will say, okay, my NPS is growing, or that is done. But essentially, when a customer or a client is experiencing your services, they're not only comparing to your competition, they are also comparing it to other categories, right? One typical example, if I could quote, is the simplicity and the speed with which today e-com players are managing the reverse logistics, right? It is very painful. Reverse logistics is the most painful kind of transaction to do. But for me as a consumer, it is so seamless. Right, today I ordered something by mistake. Instead of a shampoo, I ordered a conditioner. It took me just less than 1 minute to do it on the platform.
Correct.
Right. If I were to go to a bank or for that matter any service point, right, I'm making an effort to go there. I really don't want to break my head and start investing more time in explaining things to people. Right. So I think it has to be a concept which is consumed by the entire organization rather than one individual or one function which only takes care of CX. So I think that is the fundamental difference between measurement and transformation, I would say.
But considering that, every individual, as in every department, measure its their own capacity, their own KPIs. Who is sitting on top of everything to see whether the transformation, because you mentioned that 20% is the only equation when it comes to measurement. Who's actually keeping the top eye view to ensure that transformation is happening? It is actually, they're seeing the change. They're actually working towards building.
So typically, if you look at how an organization is structured, right? I mean, you have the head of marketing, the CMO, you have the CFO, right? You might have the head of consumer insights sitting over there, and finally the CEO, right? Now, whenever you look at governance initiatives or you look at ISO initiatives, right? Or for that matter, Six Sigma, it has to come top down. So the executive committee has to believe in the kind of transformation you need to do. Right? Now, one fundamental difference between measurement and transformation is measurement is you can carry out it at a periodic level, right? Either you capture that data at a quarterly level or for that matter at any point of consumption, right? Or interaction, you capture that data within transactional research as well. But transformation has to be continuous. The person or the individual or the function involved in the entire value chain has to understand, what this particular transformation is about, and most importantly, what that individual brings to the table as far as the transformation is concerned, right? The moment you talk about, what that particular person or function contributes to the overall, ambition of the transformation, that is when you start building ownership, right? So the concept of ownership needs to be imbibed within the organization, which has to come top down as a part of transformation.
So which means that every single department has to has to work on that equation eventually.
Absolutely.
And then the delivered KPIs would determine how the transformation would look like at the end.
Absolutely. And it needs investment, it needs time because it is not easy. See, humans are the most averse to change, right? If you tell a particular person
Nahi hota
that, nahi hota. I mean, he would say, nahi, but this is how it is being done. This is how I will do it, right? Platforms are there. Platforms are helping you look at things or get the information quickly. But platforms are not going to transform things for you. Platforms are going to help you identify issues early.
So,
right?
As much as I understood that, so measurement basically is something which is more theoretical and you can actually evaluate by looking at the equation, looking at the numbers which are coming. जो हम data punch कर रहे हैं, जो reports आ रही हैं.
Absolutely.
Transformation is more practical as to how you wanted to implement it, because even with the platforms, you will still get the data outputs.
Absolutely. It has to be on the ground. It has to be tangibly seen.
So is there a timeline for the transformation to happen? Do organizations keep that timeline, or it is just like another periodic work path?
See, there are two parts to it. One is something which is really strategic in nature, right? Which is something has to be maintained over a period of time, which means that it needs to become a way of working for the organization. Now, whenever you touch upon something which, gets into ways of working, which that is where a lot of pushback happens. Right?
Correct.
A lot of people say, no, this is going to change our lives. But essentially, transformation is about that. Transformation is about automizing, digitizing processes, manual processes, which nobody needs today. Right? I'll give you a classic example of something recently that I had to do. There were two processes that this particular organization was following. One, an online process. One, a manual process, right? Online, you go very seamless, very easy to do. The moment I went to the office, I was asked to give documents which I never had, right? Now, this is obviously with, one of the state governments. They wanted my ration card. I said, I don't have a ration card. Why would I need a ration card, right? But in the manual process, a ration card is mandatory. But in an online process, there is no ration card, right? So what has happened here is whatever transformation happened as far as digitizing the entire process is concerned, the manual process got overlooked. Right? So this is a level of transformation that, now, this is a typical case where the organization is still operating in silos, right? Because the tech department might have discussed, why do you need this? Why is this required? But it did not flow into the manual process, right?
So technically, transformation doesn't have a set deadlines.
Yes.
It is all about, how people
It is
are
a continuous process. See, why I keep talking about Six Sigma, because I think Six Sigma is the best way to explain to people how CX transformation is important and how strategic it is. Now, Six Sigma cannot be broken down, right? It cannot happen for 6 months and then you stop and then you restart it. Six Sigma is a way of working. Six Sigma is how industry or the organization needs to operate, right? Similarly, CX transformation is also continuous. Why? Number one, the clients, your clients or customers keep experiencing things in their own kind of ecosystem, right? It is not necessary that they are only experiencing your competition, right? For example, if I today have exposure to a fintech entity, right, it completely changes my expectation from a bank. It completely changes my service delivery expectation from an insurance provider, right? So I think the way fintech is changing things around us and making things difficult for organizations that are still looking at traditional ways of customer service delivery. I'm not saying that the traditional ways need to be replaced, right? They need to be there because they have a very important...
more improvised.
More improvised.
In tandem with what exactly happened on the digital side and citing from your example.
The dissonance between the two has to get minimized.
So what are basic transformation pitfalls in that case?
See, one thing is that typically an organization starts to think that CX transformation is only is the keyword here, is only about customer or client initiatives. It isn't. It is big time about business transformation. That is the first pitfall, right? The second pitfall, which is strongly connected to this one, is that if there is a weak executive alignment at the top, right, then the cross-functional alignment goes for a toss.
No weak.
If it is weak.
It is weak, okay.
It is weak, then the cross-functional alignment goes for a toss. What does that mean? It means that it will continue to become a customer-related initiative and owned by the function that is responsible for CX, which is what we started the discussion with, right? So, but it is not at all that, because if the customer delivery has to improve, a lot of processes need to change, right? And the processes cut across functions. They cut across marketing, they cut across sales, they cut across governance, they cut across finance, they cut across tech teams, right? The processes cut across all entities.
Exactly.
Right? So transformation, when you say that CX transformation only about customer initiatives, then the message that you're giving, oh, ये तो मेरा काम नहीं है, ये तो वो CX का जो है, team है, वो manage करेगा, या वो अगर वो marketing अंडर सेट कर रहा है या consumer insights में, तो they will manage it. I am from governance. Why should I bother about it? But the essence here is that if you want to transform things, there will be certain governance or regulatory requirements that you will have to evaluate, right? If you need to be more quick, you need to simplify things, right? People are going to say that, okay, do we need this? Because this is taking time. This particular approval process is taking time. Right? What can we do to actually remove it? So these two become very, very critical. That, number one, you shouldn't look at it as a only customer initiative. It has to be a business transformation initiative, which is where the cross-functional pitfalls that we talked about will start to disappear. Right? The other thing is about people. Right? Now, you might adopt a lot of tech, but that tech will not decide your strategy, right? The strategy should decide what tech you need. In fact, what AI also you need, right? What dimension of AI you need to kind of build into it. So people, which is where you need to talk about. I always talk about a pull strategy rather than a push strategy with people, right? Push strategy is something which you're forcing people to do. But pull is something that you want people to understand that they want to own it. They themselves want to do it, right? So which is where, again, a business transformation initiative, if you look at it from that perspective, only then it will happen. Otherwise, ops will say, why should I change? I'm doing good. My NPS is good. All right. But little do they know, you talked about strength of NPS, little do they know that my competition also has the same NPS. So I have no competitive advantage there, right? So you need to work towards reducing effort cost of your clients, of your customers. Otherwise, you will be in a loop of measurement. You will keep tracking KPIs. Your NPS increases by a couple of points, you feel happy. Or your detractors suddenly increase, you say, oh my goodness, what is happening? And if your passives are remaining as passives and not graduating to promoters, then you're not gaining anything.
Yeah, true. I really wanted to ask this question, but after speaking with you for last 10-15 minutes, I realized this question is actually meaningless. So the question was that, why did you actually switch from being into in research for 24 years to CX measurement and CX transformation? And I think so far what we learned from Raja is all about the transformation, and it's not that easy. Why transformation takes a lot of time. So rather than skipping, I'll skip this question because now I understood why actually you transformed. Probably you switch into more of a consultative mode to help organization understand this vital difference. Talking about the NPS, the strength of NPS you mentioned, people generally look at scores, again, going back to the same citation, 20% is the measurement. Now people, when they look at the scores, they exactly know ki kya chal raha hai and where they really need to head their business on. And when we are talking about business transformation overall, where do they lose the focus? Because I think action doesn't happen as per the, and probably I'll make it a little controversial because I've seen research happens, they get the outcomes, but the transformation never happens.
So I think, that typically happens, and I don't blame the teams that actually own the matrices. But I think what really happens is they get too involved and focus on the score, right? And they keep chasing the KPI. In every meeting they say, okay, mera, NPS score kya hai, whether in which direction it is heading, right? So I'll tell you an interesting kind of, story here. I was with one of our, BFSI clients. And in that meeting, we started to talk about NPS because NPS measurement was a key metric. And I said that, well, I think NPS is one measure, but we also need a lot of other measures that can marry or that can connect to your business metric, right? And since we were talking about BFSI, there is share of business and share of wallet is, cuts across brands and entities. So there obviously we had the client NPS as well as the competition NPS. And one thing when I deep dive into that, I asked the question to myself, well, if my NPS is so and so, how does it matter? So what? What do I do with it? Right? The next thing was that to look at how my competition is doing, right? Or if my customer is giving the promoter for me, is that customer also a promoter for my competition?
Exactly.
Right? Now, where does the insight come in? The insight comes in the fact that my detractor is also a detractor for the competition, or it is a promoter, or my promoter is also a promoter for competition or a detractor for the competition, right? Or a passive. If my promoter is a passive for competition can easily work on them and get them to be a promoter, right? Which means that my business is at risk, right? So I think when people look at scores as only KPIs and aim to just meet those KPIs over a period of time, unless or until there is a mega shift that has happened or some big kind of operational issue has happened within the organization because of which a big pain point, it gave rise to a big pain point and your NPS falls down, that is when organization get into diagnostics and try to understand, right? Today, I think I would say a mega shift has happened in thinking if our organization is concerned, and especially in BFSI because of fintech. Fintech has really disrupted, I would say, the entire business model of traditional BFSI, businesses, and it is giving them, a lot of ideas as well. I would not say that fintech is only a threat; it is also giving them a lot of ideas. Right now,
but it has actually the fintech industry has actually eased the entire process for the consumer experience overall.
Oh, absolutely. And they still operate within the same governance environment, right? They still have to abide by that. Again, we come back down to people, right? Now, fintech, since these are new organizations, they are completely digitally and tech driven as compared to, traditionally operating business models, which is where a business model shift is also required. It is very easy to say that I need to shift my business model. But the problem is that whether people are ready to do that, right? At times I was speaking with somebody, very recently, a month back, and this gentleman, a very senior marketing professional, said that I think a lot of the AI initiatives get derailed by people themselves, right? Because they look at AI as a threat, right? And at times you hit a roadblock and say that, okay, my people are not ready to do this. But unfortunately, your customers and clients are moving ahead. They are migrating from traditional to fintech. Right? Fintech is, and I admire fintech for that matter as far as customer delivery is concerned, and it is very quick. It is very quick.
When it comes to actually understanding how people are being part of this transformation, I think transformation only works then. Because when you were actually talking about fintech, the thought which was coming to my mind was about how quickly the usage of UPI has taken over the entire nation.
Yes.
Every person, even those hawker centers, wo chota thele wala, everybody's taking UPI.
Absolutely.
So it's no more ki ab aap bank jayenge, then you'll draw the cash, then you'll give it to him. I think ATM's usage has already drastically gone down.
Absolutely.
So transformation ne time liya, but I think in a much better way. But again, the point is ki what exactly are we missing when it comes to seeing the action against the scores that we are doing?
I think a beautiful example of UPI. One key reason why I think UPI has really succeeded well, it is because it has reduced the effort the consumer has to make. Right? Managing cash is a huge effort. Either you go to the bank to withdraw cash or to go to the ATM, but you still need to make an effort to go, right? Today, you don't need to do anything. It is, and we started a discussion by talking about, consumer effort score, right? If you focus on the effort that your client or a customer has to make to consume or, consume the delivery of the product, right? That is where you can make huge shifts in transformation. Right? The single point of transformation is to reduce the effort of your customer. And that is what the customer looks at. Now with UPI, I don't need anybody. If I don't have cash, somebody is coming, I have to rush to the ATM, spend that fuel or walk or make that effort, do that, come and then make the payment. But today with UPI, there's no effort at all. Absolutely no effort. So the one single reason I would say why it has really helped, or caught up and got adopted by people, because it has reduced effort. And that is what people want to look at today.
But that's the only, let's talk about fintech. I mean, that's only the example that I can cite out. But wahan pe it was easy. People were able to accommodate to, because it was making their life easier. But there's so many companies, other than fintech industry, there are other companies who are also getting through those transformation phase, and that gap of NPS has always been seen there. Aapka score is like fantabulous, but those, I wanted to pull you into the same thought which we spoke when we were on the phone. Strength of NPS, how does it work for them in that case?
See, what strength of NPS gives you a very clear picture of how your NPS stands as compared to competition.
Correct.
Right? It gives you a clear competitive context, right? So if your NPS is 80, right, and your competition NPS is also 80, what it tells you? It tells you that, okay, my competition has the same level of NPS, right? So is there a threat? Well, there is a threat.
Always.
But the extent of threat is when you figure out, when you break down the NPS into its three segments of detractors, passives, and promoters, and say that my NPS is 80, but actually the quality of my NPS is not that great. Why? Because a lot of my promoters, a significant chunk of my promoters, are also my competition promoters, right? If I do something wrong, they are immediately going to switch.
Correct.
Right? At the same time, I have a set of detractors, and 30% of detractors are actually passives of my competition, right? Or 20% of my detractors are promoters, which means that 50% of my detractor base is at huge risk.
They can switch to promoters.
They can switch to being promoters of my competition. That is a huge business risk. What strength of NPS tells you is this particular information, and what you need to do to ensure that you start moving your detractors to being passives and then promoters, right? What key actions you need. For example, it will tell you that this particular segment of customers are more detractors as compared to other segments. For example, within a banking context, asset and lending, right? Now, for a bank, a loan which I take is my liability, but it is an asset for the bank, because the bank is making money on whatever it is lending.
It is.
Right? So, for an asset, for a particular line of assets, say home loan, right? Or long-term loans or education loan, right? If they figure out that there is a huge disparity in NPS, in home loan versus education loan, which means that there is something fundamentally wrong in a particular process of either home loan or education loan. At the same time, it will tell them that, okay, for my competition, actually, home loan is doing wonderfully well. And my detractors are at huge risk, not only on home loan, but also education loan, right? Because when you diagnose the data, you don't only get share of wallet by brands, you also get share of wallet by products.
Correct.
So I might have a home loan. I have a son who is getting into engineering now. I might need education loan. Which bank will I go to? Will I go to my main bank? Or will I go to a bank where I already have, lending products from my point of view? Right, loan products.
Another bank would also be where you're actually comparing product to product, which is easier for your wallet share.
Correct. So if my bank hasn't delivered to me well on a particular kind of product, I would switch. Even though a lot of investments sit over there because the investment is sticky, right? But lending is not sticky. I might go rent interest rate अच्छा मिला मैं वहां चला गया.
Exactly.
Right? But अगर service आपको अच्छा मिलता है और doorstep service मिलता है, you might still want to shell out a bit more. You might be willing to do that, right?
Correct.
But I think what strength of NPS tells you the quality of your NPS score and how does it stand versus competition. That is one, that you are operating within the competitive framework. The other thing that you could do, which I always advise clients, is to look at categories or industries which are evolving and models that you can take inspiration from, right? Now, if I am speaking to a banking client, I would obviously say that, look at and also include in your measurement a fintech brand, right? And you will find that you have wonderful share of wallet over there. Or also include an e-com business, right? Whenever you're measuring NPS, because it will tell you what consumers look at, right? Today, if you look at, for that matter, it is okay if I name brands, right? Or companies.
I mean, totally up to you.
Okay, so if you look at Amazon, I admire Amazon a lot because the way they have been able to reduce operational friction, which is a key element of transformation, is amazing, right? I talked about reverse logistics.
Yeah.
The way they have been able to eliminate operational friction, I don't see any other business doing that across categories. It is seamless. It is simple. Today, people want simplicity, they want speed, and they want the least amount of effort. See, these are not their tasks that they really want to spend time on, right? They don't want to do. They have enough work to do, right? So these three elements, one is absolutely simple, speed, and effortless. These are the three, I would say, fundamentals of any transformation initiative that one would want to do. And when you diagnose NPS from these three lenses and ask the right questions to people, why are you my detractor and why are you my competition's promoter, then you get these kind of insights. And that is where I think measurement stops and transformation starts, because that is where you also need to go to the operations guy and say that, listen, my or your customers are saying that they want this, right? This is where, things are not working well. And that is why they could actually go. Your client or your customer is going, right? When you use such words, that is something that builds ownership. So I think the effort to reduce, and operational friction is not only with operations. It could be with governance, because operations is a big word, right? Under it could be finance. It could be processes of approvals. They create friction. The same team would say, okay, I want to digitize it, leave it, remove it, right? So in a manual process or in a traditional framework, why can't we do that, right? So one thing that, when we started to look at internet or, going back a few decades, right? What we saw that, okay, people said, mera relevance khatam ho jayega. I will start to lose ownership, right? When a small kid, right, you give him a toy, okay, you ask for the toy, the kid will say, no, I don't want to give it. That is ownership, right? The moment you give him a video game, that toy might go, right? So, and then you take away the video game, again, the sense of ownership builds, right? What you're doing is you're telling that particular individual that the toy is still yours, but this video game is even yours, more yours, right? Correct. So that is how you build ownership. So I think, when you look at strength of NPS and you do a workshop with internal stakeholders, अगर बताओगे आपका NPS 4 point बढ़ गया, सब खुश हो जाएंगे, सब बोलेंगे, oh wow, all of us have done well. But the moment you tell them that, listen, your detractor base of 30% is at huge risk, because then your NPS is going to go away, right? That is what strength of NPS brings to the table. It clearly tells you what is the quality of your NPS and what is at threat on both sides of the scale, detractors as well as promoters.
A little more explanation on that. So considering a company has a higher net promoter score, are they still failing on their competitive advantage?
Yes, they could be. They could be. See, NPS is not a zero-sum game, right? So if Bank A has an NPS of 83, not necessarily means that Bank B or bank 2 might not have a NPS of 83. Both the banks could have a similar NPS, right? Like I said, once I break down the 83 into detractors, into passives, right, and into promoters,
Then
right?
you really have to segregate it further.
You'll have to segregate it further, and then within detractors, you'll have to do a competition analysis. Within promoters, you'll have to do a competition analysis to see that, okay, so let's say I have done a survey with 1,000 people.
No, but what you're comparing is two banks with a similar score. I'm saying, what if one bank actually has a higher score?
You still could be at risk. You still could be at risk.
That's exactly what I'm trying to understand.
Yes, you still could be at risk. Why? Because if you are still doing better, that bank has a higher detractor base, right? But your customers are also detractors or passives. If they do something, then your detractors will start moving into passives.
Correct.
Which means that your NPS score is going to get impacted.
Correct.
Right? The moment they start to do, something very innovative or very transformative, your customer base is going to get affected. See, these are, industries where you see, multiple brands or multiple services from different, companies or entities getting consumed. On the other hand, if you look at industrial, it is a zero-sum game, right? Zero-sum game from a wallet perspective, right? For example, it is steel, right? So you might be taking cold roll or hot roll from one particular steel plant, right? And you are actually doing that because you need that and the capacity is not there. So, agar aap satisfied nahi ho, the moment the competition increases their capacity, you start to lose business. Which is where you will figure out that actually in the industrial context, NPS is a wonderful metric because it clearly tells you that, and in an industrial context, the client is not only talking to the marketing team, they're also speaking to finance, they're also speaking to production, they're also speaking to quality. So they have visibility across functions.
So I think this is where exactly the CX doesn't become a research problem anymore. It gets into the operational excellence problem.
Absolutely. That is why I said that the entire CX equation, measurement is 20%. The remaining is inward, right? Inward needs that 20%, right? That 20% is a very critical part of the equation because that 20% tells you how you're delivering today and what your customers want. That 20% will also tell you that the category with which you want to learn or where you want to aspire as far as service delivery is concerned, how they are doing and what they are doing. That measurement brings, right? But you keep tracking NPS without doing any transformation. And changes and transformation are very big things. Change is very tactical, very periodic. Okay, what I will do, ये मेरा peak season है, अभी admissions का time है, education loans are going to be at peak. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these approval processes for a month or two. Then I'm going to bring them back. This is not transformation. This is a tactical change, right? Because people will say, okay, the governance person will say, okay, I need to manage something here. I'll manage it. But from a transformation perspective, it has to be continuous. You need one permanent fix over there. That is where, change and transformation is very different.
I think that's exactly where we see the intersection of the research problem stops and the operational excellence starts.
Absolutely. And operational excellence, like I said, is not only ops. It is finance, it is governance, it is marketing, it is tech, it is everybody.
It's a culmination of almost everything.
Everybody.
Acha, Raja, tell me something. I mean, now considering whatever we spoke about till date has been already operational, when it comes to CX measurement or CX transformation. Until, let's say, 2023, the reason why I'm taking this year is because after that, I started hearing about chat GPTs and, AI evolution into the market research world. So I wanted to emphasize a little bit on AI. How's AI helping in this transformation process in that case?
Okay. See, I would say that AI is a wonderful enabler, right? And I'll tell you why. Because pre-transformation, businesses and functions within businesses have been operating in silos, which means a lot of data get housed in marketing, a lot of data gets housed in governance, a lot of data gets housed in sales, but rarely those data points come together, right? We talk about ERPs and all of that. What AI brings to the table is to get all that data together and give you one particular insight, right? So which means that AI becomes a wonderful tool to diagnose data like we never could do earlier, right? So it has diminished lines across functions, which means the cross-functional collaboration that we talked about, AI has become the biggest enabler there, right? However, it also gets misused, right? What it does, it then motivates people to go onto one particular platform and say that, okay, so this is my process, what can I change? Or what can I do, right? But or you will say that, okay, can you make this process more efficient? AI will tell you what your process is today, but it will not bring consumer insights and say what the consumer wants tomorrow, right? So what redesigning or changes you need in the process of workflow is something that you have to do, and then get onto AI and say that, how do I take it to people, or how do I make it more efficient?
Otherwise, whatever prompt you will give,
you'll get that. Okay, it is only going to amplify the weakness that you have in a particular process or workflow. It is not going to correct for it.
Exactly.
Right? It is not going to correct for it. So I think what AI also brings to the table is housing everything together, right? And that also means that one particular function, like I said, the kid example of the toy, right? So here, that particular human owns the data. The moment you start giving access to data, you start losing ownership, right? And which is where I think the concept again of telling people that they're contributing to what needs to be, clearly told to people, so that then they start sharing, start giving.
Technically, देखा जाए तो transformation is not that easy the way we look at it. Even if the NPS score is high, there's so many things that we really need to get into the details of it to find out where do we stand overall in the share of wallet.
So yeah, like I said, not only competition but the category which you look up to.
Exactly. Right? Now, I mean, considering that if we see overall competition, then competition actually drives down to the bottom of the product line that you actually have. It is not that कि आपके पहले 4 product अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं, बाकी 6 नहीं कर रहे, तो you don't even have to worry about. You probably have to look into the product line across.
Absolutely.
And this is where I think the strength of NPS works, because now you can drill down to the minutest of the research problem that can help you better the operational excellence over a period of time.
Correct.
But I'm thinking कि operational excellence doesn't come at just one go. Even with inceptions of the AI can help you, react faster. कि अगर मेरा consumer experience is not going good, where I can plug the dots to ensure that, doing X or Y or Z thing, this would help me improve in X period of time. Or does it? कि हम एक timeline define कर सकते हैं कि हमें इस time तक ये करना है.
Well, I think the timeline is really critical. Why? Because if there is no timeline, then you never know when this is going to finish. So I don't think it is an AI thing. It is again the executive focus.
I'm not talking about AI, Raja. I'm talking about कि AI has given you a certain solution. Of course, it's not a clear-cut solution. You ended a research problem by solving or using AI. आपका NPS score भी आ गया. Now, to get into an actual operational excellence problem, you really need to define at what certain point of time I need to be operationally excellent. So do we define that date? Do we define that timeline?
Because absolutely, we should. We need to do that, because every function or every initiative needs a very hard timeline, right? Now, what that timeline is, or what it depends on how critical the problem is, right? The problem statement here becomes the fundamental, right? Now, if the problem statement is such a huge statement that you enter into business risk, it could be because of some disruption that has happened in tech, right? Which could, change things overnight. Mobile platform, if I could talk about it, a classic example of how a particular organization couldn't see what the other is getting to the table, right? I'm talking about Android. Android was a big disruptor, right? It changed how mobile consumption happened and how with what ease, we could do it. But if that is the kind of disruption that somebody gets in service delivery, right? Again, I talked about simplicity, I talked about speed, and I talked about effort.
Yeah.
If there is something that comes under these three dimensions, which changes the game, then your timeline is today, right? Timeline is not tomorrow or day after. So it depends on, what problem you're solving, right? If the problem needs massive investment in tech and AI, then obviously it is going to take that time. But then you need to kind of break it down into tactical and strategical.
Correct.
And say that out of these, 10 things that I have to do, these are the 3 things that I can do now. These are the 3 things I can do tomorrow. And these are the, other 3 things or 4 things which I can do later, or I might not do because my cost benefit analysis doesn't allow me to do it.
So let's take this example as again, and let's make it more classical example in form of key, and that also brings us to the last question, that if I really need to tell a CEO that before you invest into a CX transformation program, what is the checkpoint? What kind of an advice would you give them that you need to have these checkpoints before you actually get into that?
One is have a clear documentation on the problem that you are solving. If not solved, what is the impact that is going to have on the business, right? These are the 2 things which are most fundamental. And the third thing is what changes you need to bring within the organization as far as people and tech are concerned to address that problem. These are the 3 things that have to be crystal clear with the CEO as well as the executive committee, because executive committee would have members of all functions. All functions of the CEO have to be, in agreement on, the same line as far as these 3. So problem statement, right? That is the most fundamental thing. And what you need to do, what is the impact if not solved?
And I'm assuming that all these things, when laid down, should have a clear deadlines and the investment and the date times.
Absolutely. That is where I talked about cost benefit analysis. So if there are 10 things that I need to do, out of those 3 are time critical, and if not managed today, and something very disruptive has happened which we missed, or the business missed, but we need to do it now. It requires whatever investment you have to do it now, because then it becomes mission critical, right? The impact is most. The other 2 things could wait, right? And the other 5 things, if cost benefit analysis with investments and all of that doesn't make sense, you might park it and say that I might pick it up later, right? But it has to be a part of the transformation initiative. Because if it is not a part of the transformation initiative, then people start to look at it as a second transformation, right? That is when people disruptions start to become much more fundamental and much more tangible. So I think the entire transformation plan needs to be there. What is critical today needs to happen today. Whatever can wait, can wait. So that is, see, when you talk about Six Sigma also, you do a very thorough, cost benefit analysis and say that, okay, this is a particular change, whether I should do it today or not, right? One of the fundamental benefits or, drivers of Six Sigma is client satisfaction, that it helps increase client satisfaction. And it is the most transformative initiative that any business could do. It really needs a lot of attention. Similarly, CX. I would, in fact, put it as a part of, big business transformation that you do. I actually stopped calling it CX transformation. I say that, listen, the moment you start calling it a business transformation, that is when you have won the biggest battle in your mind.
True. I agree. Thank you so much, Raja, for taking time out to discuss this. Because again, I think CX transformation, or let's rename it as business transformation, take its own sweet time. But if we plan it properly, I think we can be well ahead in the competitive advantage against our competitors. So I think that's exactly what my key takeaway is. And what I particularly appreciated today about this discussion overall is that, when you challenge the few assumptions many organizations take for granted, the distinction between measuring customer experience and actually transforming it is one that every leadership team should reflect upon. And the perspective that Raja just gave on CX transformation pitfalls, operational readiness, and the limitation of the traditional NPS matrix offers a very valuable reminder that customer experience is not just about collecting feedback, which traditionally we have been doing it. It's about creating an organizational capability to act upon it. And for our audience, I hope this conversation encourages you to look beyond scores and dashboards and ask a more important question. Are we truly improving the customer experiences, or are we simply measuring it better? So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Collaborative Canvas podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Amazon, and wherever you consume your content. And as always, share this episode with someone who is passionate about customer experiences, operational excellence, or the new definition is business transformation. Until next time, stay curious, stay collaborative, and keep building what next. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me today, Engesh.